And with us now on the MegaCast is Lindsay Sikora. She's the owner of Sikora Law Firm. Great to have you with us here on the MegaCast.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
And Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. You as well.
I think for so many of us with the vaccine, a lot of people are so hopeful about the vaccine, but now there are a lot of people that don't want it, even some of the healthcare frontline workers. So the question I think going into 2021 is going to be some of these legal questions, starting off with, can your employer mandate that you get the vaccine?
Yeah. And, once the excitement is your initial response, and then you start to think of all of the different nuances that it creates for a business owner. And so the short answer is, it depends. And so there are a lot of things that go into deciding whether or not an employer should mandate a vaccine. But in certain circumstances, yes, they can, and it might be advised that they do. A great place to look for employers is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. They're really the ones that are setting out the guidance for this, and the ones that are going to be giving us a lot of information as time moves on. And recently in mid-December, they did release some guidelines for employers to look to. And it really involves this idea of a direct threat. That's sort of the test, so to speak, that they're looking at. What does the threat of an unvaccinated person pose in your specific workplace, to your coworkers, to the customers that you service, and the public at large?
Well, and on top of that, too, you wonder not only businesses, but schools. Is it going to be mandated to actually come back into the classroom? Now, right now, it's not approved for the kids 16 and under, but you wonder for the teachers, will they require it for the teachers then?
Yes, and requiring immunizations, especially in public schools, is not something new. It is something that has been going on for over a century in this country, since 1905, with the first Supreme Court case that really upheld this idea that states and government entities can require this immunization. So I would expect that the schools are definitely going to be seeking out advice onto how to handle this, and look into their current practices and what they're currently doing regarding all the immunizations that children receive, and their requirements there.
Yeah, but a lot of those requirements are for the kids. What about for the adults? Because right now for the kids, they can't even get the vaccine.
Yeah, and so it's likely that it would be the same idea as employers and employees. So you would want to look to the EEOC, and they're basically having employers look into the risk that it poses for that specific workplace. So the more likely it is that a non-vaccinated person puts people at risk, the better argument that you have as an employer, as a school, to mandate that vaccine. And so you definitely can, as long as you have a plan for what happens next, because there will undoubtedly be individuals that, for medical reasons or religious reasons, are not able or willing to get the vaccine. And so you need to have a plan in place that meets the Equal Opportunity Commission's requirements as to what to do next.
And I look at this, and while it seems like it's a simple thing, it really isn't. And a lot of it's going to be that legal jargon that is written into some of these situations. Like right now, for the most part, it seems like it's on a voluntarily basis, right? Like I can choose to do it or choose not to. But you wonder too, the legality, if you're signing up for some of these vaccines, what if there are problems down the road with your health? And because we don't know, it's a new vaccine. So it opens up all of these legal questions.
Yeah, and so everybody has the right to choose what they feel is best for themselves. And so the employers will have to be careful about what they're mandating, and also make sure that their plan for those who are not going to get the vaccine is not discriminatory and does not violate any of the current, ADA, American Disability Act codes, which really limit an employer for asking a lot of medical related questions. So employers out there, be mindful if somebody's choosing not to get a vaccine for medical reasons, you might not be entitled for the specifications as to why. And so there are certain things to be mindful of when you're making that plan for a mandate.
Yeah, that's one thing I found very interesting throughout COVID-19 and this crisis, because there are HIPAA rules that are still in place, but yet we've seen it even like in professional sports where they are announcing which players have COVID, which ones don't, or tested positive, or in quarantine. And I find that interesting because I thought due to HIPAA, you wouldn't be able to release that information.
Well, HIPAA is waivable by the individual whose information it is. So, I don't know the specifics with the professional sports, but maybe there's some sort of contract or HIPAA authorization or release that is signed by these players, or individuals or employees that allows an employer to obtain this information and release it. But as of right now, individuals, employers, and the EEOC makes this clear in their guidance, should be very mindful of the confidentiality that goes into who is vaccinated, who is not. The EEOC has indicated from my reading of the guidance that you can ask as an employer if the individual, your employee, is vaccinated, but a lot of detail might not be available because of the ADA requirements. And so you'll want to keep closely that information of your employees to make sure that coworkers and the public, and other staff are not getting a hold of any specificities when it comes to who's vaccinated and why or why not.
And that opens up a whole mess of issues for some of these employers, because who's going to be the keeper of that information? Is it going to be secure? Things of that nature. But when it comes to just recreation, we've already seen where Ticketmaster has announced that they may require a negative COVID-19 test or proof of the vaccine in order to attend a concert. Do you think that's going to be the way of the future right now?
It may be. I know airlines are looking into that as well in order for flying. They've spoken a lot about this idea of a vaccine passport, so to speak. And I think Dr. Fauci has recently commented about that. And so I think this is going to be an ever evolving situation. This is unprecedented times. We've never needed these types of things before. I'm sure there'll be litigation in the courts over the next few months that will help guide our decisions. But for right now, the best place for employers is that EEOC guidance.
Lindsay Sikora with us here on the MegaCast. She is with the Sikora Law Firm. You are a litigator as well. How do you see this playing out in the courts? Is it pretty much certain that it will end up in the court system?
I think eventually it will. How soon, we don't know. But just like after the ruling in 1905 with the Supreme Court regarding the mandate of immunizations in the schools, there was a lot of litigation, and still to this day, that followed that, challenging, the ruling that came down in that case. And so I have a feeling that this will be a similar situation where eventually the Supreme Court will rule on something like this, and there may be challenges along the way that either upheld or reverse that decision.
I do think that the conversation around the vaccine is a little bit different than around the testing, because the testing, there have been so many issues with COVID-19 testing and it being inaccurate in some cases. And so I think this is a little bit different of a conversation, because a vaccine it's a yes or no thing. Did you get it? Did you not get it?
Yeah, I mean, the vaccine is definitely different than asking an employee to be tested. There is less legality around requiring testing than there is requiring vaccines. And, the important thing that the EEOC has spoken about recently is this idea of having a third party administer those vaccines and that testing. And that does remove a lot of the liability of potentially breaching discriminatory policies, HIPAA violations, ADA requirements. If you have a third party someone outside of the firm, outside of the business, doing these testings and vaccinations, because there are pre-screening questions and documents and health questions that need to be asked to properly administer the vaccine. And if it's done by a third party, it removes that liability from the employer about obtaining and keeping these confidential information.
Well, way back in the beginning of all of this, I know it seems like it was so long ago, but it was just a few months ago. The issue of wearing a mask even came up because some people were saying, I can't wear a mask due to health reasons. But now we're seeing it's pretty much mandatory to even go into a store, you need to have a mask. And saying you can't, you don't need a mask or you can't wear a mask due to a health concern really doesn't fly right now if you want access to some of these businesses. Do you think that's going to be the same argument for the vaccine?
I think it's going to be a case-by-case determination based on the business. So I think that it's really important for employers to look into the field that they're in, what industry are they in and what risks are being posed by allowing non-vaccinated people to be in the workplace. And if you have a workplace where a lot of people are working from home, most people are separated, there's not a lot of client interaction, I think that employer is going to have a harder time mandating vaccinations than somebody who is, in more of a necessary infrastructure type industry.
How does it work when you're a small business? Let's say you only have 4 or 5, even 15 below employees. It could be pretty easy, even if you don't release information about one individual, it could be pretty easy for people to figure out information about that one individual. So how do employers kind of handle that?
Yeah, inferences can be made, and I'm not sure there's much that employers can do about that. But I think the employer's specific actions and communications are what matter and what people would be looking to if there was some sort of liability issue. So be mindful of what you're saying in communications with your staff, whether it be verbal or by email. Be mindful of, what you're keeping document wise and where you're keeping it. Maybe if you're a small business, you have a locked desk drawer. Maybe you have a secured Dropbox account that meets certain HIPAA regulations that you can store things in. So that's going to take a little bit of research for you to make sure that you're storing these documents only where individuals that are allowed to see it have it.
There have been so many questions that have come up. I mean, recently, the one mandate from the health department for restaurants and bars to keep track of their patrons, and not just them, beauty salons, things of that nature. But it was like, who gets that information and where do you secure it and who can have access to it? These are so many questions that a lot of these businesses never had to deal with before. It can be a confusing time.
Yes, it is very overwhelming. I speak with a lot of businesses, and right now the main topic is, what do I do about these vaccines? And it is going to take some time to evolve and see what's required. I think the information of who visits the store is less confidential than employees' information about vaccination and potential medical information that goes along with that. So, HIPAA doesn't cover who's there, but it would cover specific information about their health.
Lindsay Sikora with us here on the MegaCast. So you said you've been talking to some businesses. When should a business owner reach out and contact an attorney such as yourself, or try to navigate this on their own?
Right now. I can't stress it enough. Especially for big businesses, there is a lot of work to be done. There is a lot of paperwork, forms, waivers, storage processes, maybe even familiarizing staff with new softwares and things so that you can safely guard this information and that you can make a plan, because there's not one size fits all for businesses regarding whether or not they should mandate. It really does require, and the EEOC has made it clear, you should be looking into the specific business that you're providing and all of the factors that go into that business, and use those to determine whether or not a mandate is right for you, because it might be okay for one business and then might be more discriminatory for another business to practice.
So while we're talking about businesses, what about if it becomes standard practice for people to be able to prove that they've had the vaccine in order to attend a concert or a sporting event, things of that nature? Would a private individual have any legality to refuse to do so and to still be able to attend such events? Because those kind of are not mandated. It's not like you have to go to work. These are, just additional things that you may want to do.
Yes, and I can definitely see the potential conflict there and all of the issues that may arise here shortly because of that. And I think it's important for employers in deciding whether or not to do this mandate to look carefully on how it affects your client base and the risk and health of everybody involved. And so it is important for you to assess everything. It's a huge big picture analysis that needs to take place. And it's also important why that individual is asking or requesting to not have that vaccine. Is it for a health reason? Is it for a religious reason? Those are the two main reasons that are recognized in the United States as a way to avoid these mandates. And so you want to make sure that you're not discriminating against anybody's religious beliefs or health restrictions.
2021 is going to be quite the year, isn't it? I mean, like we said, the vaccine is hope. It does bring hope, but it also brings so many of these legal questions right along with it.
That is very true. And there's a lot to navigate, and it's all unknown. And as we go, we're going to have more answers, and there's no better time to have an expert on your side to make sure that you are following all the laws that are evolving every day. You could have read articles or sought advice 2 weeks ago, and then now, since the EEOC's guidance came out on December 16th, things have changed, and counsel or advice may change with it. So to be on top of that is really important. I can't urge it enough.
So one other question before we let you go. What happens if down the road there are some side effects, some long-term health side effects associated with the vaccine? Would an individual have any legal repercussions to hold either their employer who mandated they get it or the manufacturer of the vaccine liable in any way?
I think there's a lot of unknown regarding that. I think that it's FDA approved, and so the FDA is the entity that is in charge of certifying that these vaccines are safe for the general public. And so I do think employers will be able to rely upon the fact that they are requiring an FDA approved vaccination. It's not something experimental. Although it is new, it is something that has passed the rigorous testing. And so I think it would be reasonable for an employer to hold on to that and use that in help of a potential liability claim.
Lindsay, before we let you go, do you want to let people know where you're located if they have any further questions?
Sure. Sikora Law Firm is in Farmington Hills, Michigan. And you can check out our website, www.sikoralawfirm.com, or give us a call at 248-230-2330.
Lindsay, I have a feeling you and your team are going to be pretty busy going into 2021.
Yes, I would agree, but I'm happy to help.